Welcome back to a walk through the tarot. The Fool has arrived at card 11, Justice, the archetype of balance, and he feels back on solid ground. If this is about the law, then how hard can this card be? He's about to find out. In the last video, he encountered the Wheel of Fortune. It marked the centre of his walk through the cards, and now he's facing card 11, and a decision will need to be made. We're going to look at the background to this card, explore its symbols, and examine the messages it has for the Fool as he continues with his journey. In ancient Greece, the Titan goddess Themis had control over divine law and the natural order of things, as well as custom and tradition. People would turn to her for advice and guidance because they believed she possessed prophetic wisdom. The Romans reinvented Themis as Justitia. She presided over civic and legal justice and is still with us today. Known as Lady Justice, her statue can often be seen outside law courts, where she holds a sword to represent power and a set of scales to reinforce the principle of fairness. In many images she's blindfolded to show the law was designed to be impartial, objective and beyond external influence. When tarot emerged in Renaissance Italy, many of its images represented the morality values of the time. This card stressed the values of rationality and social order. In the Visconti Sforza tarot, Justice appears with a white horse. This might be a reference to the Bible's Book of Revelation, which describes truth sitting upon a white horse, but most decks from this time showed Justice with a sword and a set of scales. As tarot moved to France in the 16th century, Justice sometimes appeared with wings. This might be a reference to the Archangel Michael. In early Christian images, Michael had a sword and weighing scales. He met the newly deceased and looked at their past actions, decided if their eternity would be spent in heaven or hell. In later Marseille-style decks, the wings were replaced with a high-backed chair or throne. When tarot was adopted by the French occultists in the 18th and 19th centuries, its interpretation changed. Antoine Court de Gebelin claimed the cards contained teachings from ancient Egypt, and he suggested Justice should show the feather of the goddess Mat, which was used by Anubis to weigh the hearts of the dead and decide what would happen to the soul. Any Catholic influence was removed, and Justice now represented cosmic or divine wisdom. A century later, the occultist Eliphas Levi aligned Justice with the Hermetic principles of balance. She became spiritual and magical, representing higher forces which individuals could manipulate through their initiation into ancient knowledge and wisdom. In the Waite Coleman Smith tarot, Justice holds a sword and scales, and the balance is between inner and outer energies. While the veil shows the Fool, he has yet to find this integration. It's a critical point on his journey. He will need to lift the veil to walk through. So let's take a closer look at the symbols on the Waite Coleman Smith version of the card. The scales represent the binary oppositions of logic and rationality on one side and the spiritual, intuitive self on the other. They're in a constant state of conflict, and those seeking deeper knowledge must learn to control these opposing forces. The sword stands for the intellect, which can cut through confusion in order to discover the truth, but through a process which is rational and retains objectivity. Justice wears a crown to symbolise authority. The square at the front represents the four elements and shows earthly stability and order. Whatever reality is chosen, it will still need to be grounded. A throne shows she has authority. Her foundations are solid and demand respect because Justice has control over both material and non-material realms. She wears no blindfold and sees both sides of every situation, but her judgment will always be appropriate. Her robes are red, the colour of passion and the power of creative energy, but one white shoe can be seen. And white represents the purity of spirit, and it's a reminder of deeper non-material energies and knowledge. The two pillars represent the integration of binaries. The role of justice is to balance oppositions. A veil between the pillars divides the material and non-material worlds, and justice understands the difference between them. It's time for the Fool to make his own decision as to what comes next. So let's look at the messages the Justice card might have for him. The Fool has been shown the construction of his conscious world through the archetypes on line 1. The purpose of this second line of cards is to support the exploration of his unconscious self, so he can better understand what drives and motivates him. The sword cuts to the crux. It's time for clarity. The Fool will be judged on his actions, but with fairness. This card is less about what we do and more about why. Justice knows everything happens for a reason, and the Fool has to learn to respond to the actions of others without bias or condemnation. He must try to understand the underlying rationale, to see clearly without making judgments based on lack of knowledge. We think of the law as being secular, but justice deals with truths of a higher kind. It still involves the resolution of conflict, but this is an internal as much as an external process. The Fool has to be honest about himself and take responsibility for his mistakes, especially those which might have caused harm to others. It might not have been his fault directly, but could be a consequence of how he was brought up and the situations he found himself in. However, there will be no more excuses in the future. The truth justice represents is karmic in nature. You are what you do, and the previous cards have all led to this point. The Fool has to own his actions. From now on, everything he does must align with his higher self. And this will ensure the outcome is just and fair according to the age-old principles of as above, so below, as without, so within, and you get back what you give, often threefold. The archetypes he's met so far have looked at different aspects of different situations, but the same themes have run through them all. And now justice is the point where everything he's encountered is starting to come together. And, as is the way with tarot, there are opposing messages. The card might represent bias or dishonesty, blaming others or seeing yourself as a victim to avoid the consequences of your actions. It might indicate resentment, defensiveness, or a disregard for the truth of the matter. At its extremes, it can mean corruption through the abuse of power, or prejudice based on surface appearance without taking the time and effort to find the truth. But it's never too late to change, and when justice appears, it's time for accountability. Unless the Fool faces himself as well as he can with the knowledge he's gained so far, there will be no further progress. Every card he's encountered has been leading him to this point. Future decisions must be made with a clear mind, fueled by his intellect rather than emotions. From now on, he is solely responsible for what he does. He can lift the veil and walk through, or he can turn away. Justice is a pivotal stage on his journey. Should he choose to go on, the Fool will need to retain balance, to become the still point in a turning world where everything around him continues to move. If he fails to understand how his actions create his world and refuses to take responsibility for ensuring he stays on the right path, the journey ends here. Lifting the veil is to step fully into the tarot. He still has much to learn, and there are some difficult cards ahead, but he doesn't yet know this. The next card he meets is the Hanged Man. It represents the first step behind the veil, and our Fool will need to trust the universe to ensure he's in the right place at the right time in order to progress. So, join us for the next step on a walk through the tarot.